apps, it's the tipping is just terrible.
And I explained this in a video. This is my theory, and I want to know like what you think. And we put out a video where I specifically told people stop using the apps. Just stop ordering off the apps. And because the problem is, I really feel like during the pandemic, all right, everybody got so used to using these apps. Then we all got stimulus checks. So people were now into the habit, because let's face it, using the delivery apps to get food is an addiction, because food is an addiction. So now we have an easier way to feed this addiction, not having to go out of the house to have people deliver food for you. We were getting stimulus checks. Tips were good because people had all this extra money that they didn't know what to do with. So they were tipping. Now nobody has any money anymore. All right. That's
also don't
have
forget,
money, but
Lou,
they're still using the apps though.
But before you even move forward, don't forget that during the pandemic, that was what was fun. We couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
So it wasn't just even about getting food easy to the house. It was like, oh, this is gonna be my fun thing for the day.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that people were using this extra money, and they were using it properly towards the tips. Great. But now the problem is that the addiction is in. The addiction has happened. You're gonna still use the apps, even if you can't really afford it. You're still people are still going to use it, and how are they going to afford it? Well, it's going to be on the back end. The one portion of the whole entire thing that they can control, besides the fact of controlling it by just not using the app, the one thing they can control is how much they're tipping the driver. And I think that's the whole issue: is people are continuing to use these apps when, in reality, like, I hate to say it because we obviously want to do deliveries. People need to delete these apps from their phones and stop using them because they cannot afford to use them. They can't afford it.
Losing head for all.
Yeah. But if you're going to keep on using it, I'm going to deliver to you if you tip accordingly. But really, financially, you should stop ordering off these apps because you clearly can't afford it. Because if you could, you would tip the driver. Like, you're probably not really a douchebag, but you kind of are a douchebag in a way.
I mean, what would you?
Where
would you think? Not being specific to any platform unless you want to, but where would you think? And not amounts, but like percentage of people tipping it all, where it is.
I mean, just in general. I mean,
I mean, do you think it's like way up in terms of people tipping nothing?
No, I'd say it's more way up in people tipping inadequately.
Right, way less.
Yeah. I don't think I wouldn't say there's been a rise in no tips. I'd say there's been a rise for sure in just
and it doesn't help
tips.
that the apps are now paying less too. That
right, apps paying less, apps,
and it doesn't make any sense because they're still charging the same amount.
They're charging more.
They're getting their money.
Yeah,
and they're paying the drivers less.
So so what's happening here?
Well, I've always said get rid. I mean,
we knew this was coming.
A lot of people don't like this, but I always say get rid of the base pay. I really do, because it makes it easier for the company. It makes it easier for you to be a true independent contractor, because with that would have to come drop the acceptance rate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And therefore you then create a true independent contractor platform. Because here's my point. When people are like, dude, you're crazy. Really, I'm crazy. You can do 2 dashes an hour and $2. It's down to $2 base pay. You really, that $4 is making or breaking you? Because if it is, get out.
Yeah.
I mean, because basically I think of it like a bartender. Yes, even bartenders don't get, like, I never got minimum wage for the state. Every state has a allowance for a bartender minimum wage. Like the federal minimum wage is $7.75. No state is below that. A bartender, when I was a bartender in all the way up to 2008 in Colorado, was $3.15 an hour. So even though the state was higher than the federal, even let's call it 10 for minimum wage, they knew that I was pulling 30-ish. And so they were like, well, bartenders get paid this. And across the board, that was the pay. And that's what I've always said needed to happen with, first of all, when these states battle to go, let's give them full minimum wage. No. Now you're doing something that would completely collapse it. If the bars had to pay $10, $15 an hour to every employee, The mom and pops would go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, I mean, there has to be a meet in the middle, but I think it's get rid of the base pay.
So the question is, okay, you get rid of the base pay.
And then you have a final screen, like in the flow screens, that says, you know, how quickly do you want it?
Right.
And those are different tip levels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but then something would have to happen on the customer end for the fees to reduce their fees. So you say reduce the fees, the base pay gets rid of the fees or reduces the fees. There's going to still be some kind of fees. We know that because fees should go towards operations, processing,
they can do
operations,
processing, service fees.
You know,
they can start naming up new things too.
You know,
fee.
I don't know, paying for whoever the this terrible IT company is that creates a DoorDash app that clearly they don't know how to like actually do anything.
Well, that should be in service.
Yeah.
Processing and service could be separate.
Mm-hmm. The fees need to be lower. Maybe then the customer might pass that tip along. But again, with the way the economy is now, maybe they still don't. I really believe that the addiction aspect of this is a big deal because we know people shouldn't be using the apps if they can't afford it.
Yeah.
They should be going to the grocery store